And now, without further ado, I want to introduce Ryan Good. Ryan is manager of site reliability at Yum Brands, one of the world's largest fast food restaurant companies. He has over a decade of experience in IT roles, from working help desk for small startups to managing SRE teams for Fortune 500 companies. His talk today is Only Doctor Who Has a Sonic Screwdriver. Ryan, the floor is yours. You can share your screen and take it away.
All right, yes. So as Andrew said, today's talk I have titled Only Doctor Who Has a Sonic Screwdriver, or There is no tool to rule them all in software development. The whole concept here is that while we all wish we had that single pane of glass, that one thing that we could give to everyone that handles all of their workflows, monitoring, deployments, CI/CD, like everything that they could ever want to do in the software development world, unfortunately, that's just not possible. So often what that means is we spend a lot of our time evaluating different tools, trying to cut through all of the cruft, all of the marketing materials to try to find different solutions for our different stakeholders. And that can feel like toil. And it's actually kind of funny. I looked up some older definitions of toil, and it actually is battle is one of my favorites. Which I think is completely appropriate when you think about software development. Imagine, you're trying to get all of the teams on the same page, from developers to the product owners to the finance folks to senior leadership. It really does feel like a battle at times, not to mention you have to evaluate those tools. Just getting them to agree on what the tool needs to do is a battle at times. So, but really, it doesn't have to feel like toil. With some of these tips that I've compiled, hopefully it'll help ease the load a bit and allow you to be a little bit faster, a little bit more agile when it comes to getting through the evaluation process, or getting through just coming up with that initial set of rules. But the first thing, and this is probably one of those buzzwords that you hear all the time, but you always want to start with why. When it comes to evaluating these things, you want to know why you're doing this. What problems are you trying to solve? What is that end state, that expected the solution is going to solve? Once we have that clear end goal, we can cut through all that marketing fluff, like I said, get down, take all of the stuff that everyone's throwing at you, all the promises that every company is saying with all of their beautiful ads and their beautiful marketing materials, and cut down and get to the nitty-gritty details of what you really care about when it comes to what that tool or solution is going to solve for you. The second is must-haves. You want to get a list of those features or even budgetary items, whether it costs, whether it's open source. Have that list defined before you start evaluating tools. And this can come from developers, the different stakeholders. You want to work with them to define these. One caveat I would say is even this list should be prioritized because, again, most tools are not going to get you to 100%. You might get to 80 or 90% of what you need. And then you'll have to have some other, supplement tool or something you already have to fill the gap there. So even though this must-have list, you should have those prioritized items. Then there's the nice-to-haves. These are those things that maybe you already have some tooling that you would like to replace, or with this new solution, or some of the things that developers have asked for that aren't like super priority, but might make their lives a little bit better, or some visibility tooling or something into another aspect of what you guys have in your organization, but not gonna be a deal breaker here. These are just those really nice things that are a plus that might at the end, when you go to make a recommendation, say, oh, not only do we get these top 5 things, it's also, this tool gives us these 3 or 4 things. And that's why, you strongly recommend this solution. So once we have those, we have to know where to start. Where do we actually go look for these tools? There's plenty of places out there that have compiled lists. So I'm not going to get exhaustive with this. I have a few here that I like to start with. These mainly focus on the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, and DevOps community at large. But even when you drill into these, we can see that this can be overwhelming at first glance. And so the nice folks over at CNCF have actually broken this down to a little bit more digestible, where you can click through and see the very specific categories. But even then, it's not like the smallest list possible. So that's where some of these other tips that I have hopefully will help you get through even this smaller list quicker. There's also the periodic table of DevOps tools. I like this one as well. It's really neat the way that they've present the data again via categories. So beyond that, once we have that why, we've identified the must-haves and the nice-to-haves, you're likely going to be able to eliminate 50 to 75% of the tools that maybe are on those lists or some of the things that you've looked at. Again, you've cut through all of the fluff. You know if I can pay for this or if it has to be open source. All of that data is usually right within the first few minutes of a tool's website or their project repository, that kind of thing. So you're going to be able to eliminate those items and really narrow it down already. And one key thing to remember is when you're evaluating various tools, you're not just evaluating the tool and what it can accomplish, you're also evaluating the vendor. So if this is like an enterprise solution or more geared towards larger organizations or even small and medium businesses with a support component, you're evaluating that support component. Make sure that you're paying attention in those initial calls, how they're treating you, the things that they're offering to help you get going, whether that's setting up POC, professional services, those kinds of things. And then if it is open source, you're looking at the developer community. What does the contribution rate look like? How many stars are on GitHub? What are like a lot of the issues and how quickly are they solved? All of those things are going to play into your recommendation in weighting one tool versus another. Then it's time to set up your POC. And maybe you've gotten it down to 2, maybe 3 choices. Now it's time to actually see what it does in some real life scenarios. So you're going to set up that POC in a test environment, whatever your typical workflow is, and get that going and maybe get in front of a couple developers, a couple stakeholders, see what they think, and get some feedback. Then in addition to that, what I also recommend is setting up a POV or a proof of value. I've actually seen a lot of companies starting to do this for you. A lot of vendors will help you get this going. And a lot of this is going to include, cost savings, engineering hours that you're going to save, the true cost of maintaining this actual tool, those kinds of things to prove out that value at the end, just to make it easier when you need to write up those, to build that case for the stakeholders. This is just going to set you up for success there and make it a lot easier because you'll have those real data points. Then it's time to build the case. You've narrowed it down, again, maybe 1 or 2 at this point, just depending on what you're trying to release into the wild. You might have more things. So you build that case, you gather all that information, user feedback, cost, that POC, POV, what the level of effort to implement it is, all of that stuff then comes down to giving your recommendation. So you've built that case. Now let's present that recommendation. And you want this to be polished. You want buy-in from those stakeholders. You want to be able to have gotten those focused pieces together in your presentation so that, if you have one presentation to give to all of them or, multiple presentations, depending on who you're talking to, you have those tailored talking points so that it's easy to digest, very much easier to get on board with the solution that you are recommending. Once you do that, everyone's in agreement. Maybe some people who are hesitant, but hey, you can't please everyone, and that's okay, because the big things are who are your most important stakeholders and are they happy? Once you've agreed upon that, start your implementation, and then it's time to profit. Everybody's happy. You've done the best you could. You've spent, hopefully as little time as possible going through these steps, a lot easier than it would be in the past, less toil, and everybody's happy, including yourself. So then just to recap, we start with that why, to develop a clear end goal, develop a list of must and nice to haves, start that evaluation, and remember you're also evaluating the vendor and community, get a POC or POV, build the case and present that to the stakeholders, get the implementation done, and then profit.